What's up, guys? It's your boy Stevie G coming at you with a new episode of the Seamless Garage Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to bring up something that's a little bit of a touchy subject. In this episode, we are talking about EV or electric vehicles. So stay tuned as we get into this. Alright guys, so electric vehicles, EV. Well, what made me come up with this topic is that I actually just recently went back and got a refresher course on EVs, on electric vehicles, and they've come a long way since I have taken my last class. Since I took my last class, because this is the first one I did for an actual manufacturer. The other class that I took for hybrids and electric vehicles at the time was back in 2011. So technology has come a long way in the 10 years. Not a crazy amount, but it's come a long way. They're definitely more efficient, but we're going to get into it. We're going to get into our electric vehicles, the future, and what I think about them. I'm going to give you basically the pros and cons, what they bring to the table, what I don't like about them currently that they could possibly fix, and a couple of other people's ideas on the future of these things. So let's just start out with, I think our current president made a bold statement that all manufacturers will be selling only electric vehicles, no combustion engines by 2035. It's kind of a bold statement, in my opinion. I'm not going to get too political at all, but it's a bold statement because there's a lot of improvement they're going to have to do. And let's see, that's 14 years from now, right? Yeah, 14 years if I can do math properly. So in 14 years, there's a few things that I want to give you guys to consider that they've got to improve by then for it to make sense. Now, there's already a lot of things that do make sense as to why somebody would want to buy it. And like I said, we're going to get into that, but there's been some bold statements being thrown around there, 2035. I just keep hearing that all the time now, ever since our president made that statement, 2035. I feel like I said, not to get too political again, I feel like the government gets too deep into this needs to be a whole different podcast, actually, but, excuse me, I feel like the government gets too deep into the way the car manufacturers' pockets, car manufacturers' design ideas, and all of that. And this is the reason why, like I said, this is a tangent. We need to get this on a podcast. I need to quit using that word tangent. I use it way too much. But what they're doing is they're causing the price of vehicles to go up, changing design ideas. In my opinion, it has a lot to do with why cars aren't as reliable as they used to be. In ways they are way more reliable, but in a lot of ways they're not, because they have to do certain things for emissions restrictions. I'm actually going to write that down for a whole nother podcast right now, so that we can do that, because I think you guys need to learn about that. So give me just a second. I'll cut this out. Yeah, so anyway, we need to talk about that. So anyway, let's move on. So if you don't know what I'm talking about EV or electric vehicles, that's what they're going to be called, as EVs. That's what everybody's going to be calling them, I'm sure, until they get another nickname for them, which stands for electric vehicles, obviously. Look around you. I'm sure you see by now, Tesla has really taken over the market. I think they've actually got 80% of the electric vehicle market. They're really taking it over, So they're really taking it over. So you got to think about that. You've got Nissan with the Leaf, which wasn't very popular, at least not in my area. I think we've worked on one Leaf in the last 5 years or so. Sometimes they'll stop by and get it charged, which we're gonna talk about that. But you got Tesla, which is, like I said, taking 80% up. And you got Nissan with the Leaf, and now we've got a new one that's coming out next year. Should be at the beginning of 2022, called the Aria, and it's going to be similar to a Murano. It's going to look kind of like a like a Murano. It's going to be a excuse me, a crossover SUV, 4-door, and I think we're even going to have a sport model. So. Who else has got some? There's a few. There's quite a few, actually, but I really can't think of them off the top of my head because I'm really just getting into them, and I'm starting to realize that there's some cool things about them. So let's just get into it. A whole different podcast I'm going to make on performance on these things, on what I think, because I'm comparing these things to RC cars and to drones, which I've done a lot of research on, I'm very familiar with. And after breaking this car down, and realizing how they're designed and stuff, it's just a big scale RC car. It's got a few different nuances, but on the grand scheme of things, when it comes to performance, there's two things you do on RC cars. What? You either get a bigger battery pack for more performance and more power, or with a different motor, with either a bigger stator, that type of deal is what changes it up. So, all right, let's get into it. So what do EVs bring to the table? Well, one of the cool things that's a convenience is that some people may think it's an inconvenience. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but battery pack versus having to go to the fuel station all the time. Okay. If you're one of those people that, has like a 30-minute commute to work and back, you're going to save a ton of time, which is huge to me. My time is huge to me. I hate stopping at the gas station, but you got to do it. You're going to save a lot of time and also money, because fuel prices change all the dang time. Okay? Whereas with this car, you just take it, you just drive it to work, drive it back. You'll still have charge left, but you can hook it up. Just that way, you get a full tank all the time. You get a full charge. With fuel, you got to fill that thing up. You know what I mean? You have to fill it up all the time. And like I said, fuel prices change all the time, depending on what the government's doing, depending on how the market is. Whereas electricity doesn't fluctuate as much. I mean, how often do you see your bill fluctuate and it not depend on how much electricity you've used? So exactly, it doesn't change near as much. It's more predictable. So you've got that. You got the convenience factor of having a battery pack that you don't have to fill up fuel all the time. One thing that I can add on to that little caveat is that you don't ever have the opportunity to accidentally put diesel in your fuel tank. I think I talked about that in a previous podcast. You don't have an opportunity to accidentally put diesel in your fuel. So there's a plus for you guys out there that may have kids that might make that mistake. Here you go. So the other thing, charging station can act as a generator for some models. So what that means is, I know Tesla has this, and I think a few other companies have done it already, but you can have it where the charging system is part of your home. Okay, you can have it where it's hooked up to the electricity in your home. So what happens is it's not a separate station, it's part of your garage or whatever. So you plug it in, it charges like you normally do. But the cool thing is, on these ones I'm talking about, if the power goes out for a small time, for not a real, I don't know how long it is, but a couple of hours at least, your battery power from your car, while it's connected to the house, can power the house. So I think that's a really cool idea. It's just like having a generator, except for, a generator runs off of fuel and can run forever. Your battery pack's only going to last so long. So which is cool. You could go drive or something, get it charged somewhere else that does have electricity, come back and still power your house again. So that's an idea. I'm figuring out some cool little strategies here as we're talking. So anyway, the other thing is that is supposed to be, what it brings to the table is zero emissions. Okay, zero tailpipe emissions. That's the whole goal here. I'm telling you right now, that's the only reason why these cars were designed. They weren't designed because they wanted to go fast. Okay, they weren't designed for that. They weren't designed because they ride better. They regardless of these commercials saying about them being quiet, they did not design them because they don't have any noise. Because guess what? When you go down the road, you have noise. If you've ever ridden in an electric vehicle down the highway, it's bad because you don't hear the engine, which is cool and all, but you definitely still gonna hear the road noise. That's still there. I mean, you're gonna have to have sound deadening like crazy. But the more sound deadening you add, the heavier the car gets, which lowers your mileage on your battery. So I won't get into those, but those are gonna be some issues. Okay. So zero emissions, cool. That's why they designed it. So that is true. Zero emissions. I'm gonna get into a con about is it really zero emissions, but zero emissions. That's the whole main deal. It further advances us into autonomous driving. So with autonomous driving, that just means that the car drives itself, right? Well, with an electric vehicle, with the fact that like you have instant torque, it can do exactly what it needs to do without any lag of the combustion engine. Because you know how it is. If you get in your car and you put your foot on the pedal, it doesn't have torque right away, okay? The engine's got to rev up and do its thing. And it's got a transmission that's got to shift too. So yeah, I don't know if you ever got a car that had a transmission and sometimes it would get stuck between gears. It's not really stuck between gears, but a little bit of a lag before it gets on it when you get on it to try to go past another vehicle. So with electric vehicles, it can do exactly what it wants at the time, and the timing's not off. Okay, it just makes them more precise. It makes autonomous vehicles more doable, if that makes sense. One thing I want to mention though with the autonomous driving is it doesn't actually go exactly with the autonomous driving, but it's a cool feature on electric vehicles. I don't know if it's on all of them, but I know it's on our new Leaf, and I know it's going to be on our new Aria. Is that it's got an e-pedal, and what an e-pedal is the best way I can describe it, and my instructor described it too. I actually got to drive one. It was pretty cool. It's kind of like driving a go-kart. I wish I could come up with a different analogy. Not a go-kart, but a golf cart. Sorry. It's kind of like driving a golf cart, where when you take your foot off the throttle, it acts like a brake. Like like you can drive it like one pedal driving. It will brake for you and slow the car down, and it will stay there. You can take, like at a stoplight, you can take your foot off of the throttle or the brake. I mean, nothing there, and it'll stay there until you put your foot on the throttle, and then it speeds up. But as soon as you take your foot off of the throttle, it starts slowing down quite a bit. Pretty cool little feature. I would say I'd probably end up using that if I got an EV. And then the last thing that it kind of brings to the table, which I think is the biggest thing, I think out of all of this, if I was thinking about, like, I try to think about what I would do because I won't buy myself a new vehicle. I just don't. Okay, I got my old 91 truck, and I'm building a 91 race car. Well, not race car, but a 91 show car, race car style modified car. And I like building old stuff like that. I don't know that I'll ever have a brand new vehicle or anything like that, but I think about for my grandmother, my mother, my wife. You know what I mean? I keep her in a newer vehicle. So I think about things like that. And this is probably the biggest thing to me. If your boy was ever going to buy an EV, this would probably be the reason why. Okay, much less maintenance. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're going to put technicians out of business? I don't know, but let me explain. So much less maintenance. One thing I know for sure is that there's no engine oil, so we don't have to change our engine oil every 3,000 or 5,000 depending on what kind of engine you got. So there's that cost, which is what, At cheapest, it's like $35. You know, it can go up to $100 in oil change. Okay. So you don't have that. You don't have air filters, which are $15 and $20 a piece every 15,000 miles. Okay. You don't have that. You don't have transmission flush services. You don't have coolant flush services. You don't flush that. There is coolant in this system, but it's only to cool down the circuit boards and stuff. And you only change that out every 200,000 miles, so you really ain't gonna worry about that. The only thing you can really service is the brake flush, the brake fluid, because yes, it still does have hydraulic brakes, and you can rotate the tires, and that's about it. It does have brake pads, but I've talked to a lot of people because we haven't done any. Nobody has done brake pads on a Leaf or anything like that. I don't know what Tesla's doing or the others, but with the regenerative braking from the engine, where it charges itself from regeneration from the engine, or the motor, I should call it a motor, it's not an engine, it's a motor, electric motor, that does majority of the braking, so the pads don't get wore down as fast, so you don't do very many brake jobs. So that's why, that would be my big selling point, is the fact that there's basically no maintenance. While everybody else is driving in a dealership to get their oil changed all the time, I'm driving right past them. All I gotta do is do a charge. Okay. So that's pretty much it when it comes to what it brings to the table. Let's get into the current problems I have with the EVs. Okay. First one being charge station placement. Okay. We're still not to the point where, especially here in the South, here in East Texas, we don't just have charging stations everywhere. And some of the places I see, it's just Tesla only, because they have a different charging port than what Nissan does, and some of these other brands. I'm sorry if I keep bringing up Nissan, but I'm a Nissan mechanic, and that's the one I know the best. You know what I'm saying? I have done research on others, but that's the car I know the best. Just not enough charging stations, in my opinion. Okay. And then also, like in Dallas, I noticed a lot of the charging stations were out of order. So you can get stuck real fast. That's the only thing that bothers me. Fuel, let's say I run out of fuel, I can run and grab a 5-gallon tank real quick, you know what I mean, and put some fuel in my car. It's readily available everywhere. But with the battery, you gotta charge it. So you really gotta, if you're gonna travel long distances, you've really gotta mark out where you're going. You can't just hop in the car and go. You really need to decide your trip and how far you're going to be, where you need your next charge, and map it out. You need to map out your trip if you're going to go long distances in these things. So that's a big problem to me. Like, first off, right, like, if nothing else, I have to charge my vehicle. And if I'm away from home and I'm traveling, I've got to have somewhere to charge it. Or if let's say I get in a pickle, an emergency happens, and I need to charge the car while I'm away from the house. Like, it's not, an ideal situation. I need to be able to charge the dang thing. So that's a problem with me. Next one is the distance with the battery. That kind of goes back into the charging, why we would have to charge it so much. The distances with the Teslas are getting up there. They're getting really good. Okay, they're getting close to, if not right at, what a full tank of fuel would be in some of your smaller passenger cars and your crossover SUVs. The Leaf is getting there. I think we're at 200 to 250 miles on a full charge. So we're getting there, but it's still not perfect. So that's an issue with me, is the distance with the battery. I kind of have a few ideas. By 2035, maybe there'll be where you pull up to a station and the cars will be built where the battery can be pulled out real quick. Because at this point, changing the battery out is crazy. And it's dangerous too. So that's the other thing, is you got to keep it safe. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's what I was thinking, is instead of a quick charge, like we get to the point where you pull up, you got a technician that runs out there real quick. Just find some way to where you can just slide the battery out, slide a new one in real quick, tap it on his butt, and tell the customer to go on. They got a new battery with a fresh charge. So basically like a rental battery setup. I don't know. That's just something that's been going on in my head. So the next thing is dangerous with 400 volts. So these vehicles are dangerous. That's why I had to go to training, because you've got to have a certified tech in the shop to work on them, and he's the only one that can work on them because they're that dangerous. They got 400 volts running through them at all times. So if something happens, you're driving down the road and something comes up in the road and cuts a wire or something that touches the body, I mean, it can be dangerous. So they want people who know what they're doing to work on these cars. So we got to have gloves, you know what I mean, non-conductive shoes and everything else. So, but that 400 volts, especially in collisions, right? Cars are going to have wrecks. That's just the name of the game. Cars are going to have wrecks. So, you get in a wreck and one of those 400 volt cables gets severed. I mean, it can be bad. It can be dangerous. That's all I'm saying. So, only time will tell. I mean, so far, not a big deal, but, we don't have as many EVs on the road as they're wanting. So, it could be a big deal. We'll see. And then, one of the last things is, I have questions about the carbon footprint of batteries and the zero emissions, okay? I just have problems with the claim. I mean, I don't even really believe in global warming, in my opinion. That might just set a lot of you off. I don't know. But I don't really believe in global warming. I think the world does what it wants to do, and I think the world goes through phases. But we won't get into that, okay? We won't get into that. Is it really eco-friendly to be building batteries all the time, lithium-ion batteries like that on the reg? And what are we doing with these batteries when the cars get totaled out? Do they go to the scrapyard too? Are they getting turned back in to be rebuilt? Because if they're getting turned back in to be rebuilt and repurposed, cool. I'm cool with that. But the fact of the matter is, if you checked out any of these battery building plants, go look them up on Google Earth, go look them up in general. You'll look, there's nothing living in that area of that factory. You know what I mean? Like the trees and everything else are dead. They're all around it. There's no living plants or anything like that. So it makes me wonder, okay, are we really doing the world a justice? Or are we really just trying to push this EV thing? Don't know. That's a conspiracy for somebody else. I'm just bringing up the question, okay? And my last thing, my biggest problem, okay? My biggest problem. There's no exhaust note, bro. There's no exhaust note, okay? No exhaust note. There's no exhaust smell. I love the smell, man, of a nicely tuned car. You know what I'm saying? Especially at the track, man. The track fuel, love the smell of it. So, like I said before, I think I've told a lot of people this. I'm going to be that old head. I'm in the generation of fuel injection, right? I grew up in the generation of fuel injection, but I was taught by carburetor guys, right? I was taught by dudes who messed with carburetors. We always called them old heads who never wanted to change, because when you talk to them, they don't want nothing to do with fuel injection. They want a carburetor, they can tune the jets, do all that, and they feel like they have the ultimate freedom. Well, I think we have the ultimate freedom of fuel injection. I think tuning is superior, and we can dial it in to the best efficiency, right? I'm going to be that old head. I'm going to be the carburetor guy at some point. My children, my children's children, they're going to be like, Grandpa, you're crazy. Electric vehicles are where it's at. They got instant torque, best performance, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, yeah, while I'm over here tuning my 91 Talon again for the 15th time, you know what I'm saying? And, fumes coming out the tailpipe looking like an asshole, I guess. You know what I mean? While I'm tuning my car and they're over there driving their EVs. So eventually I'll be the bad guy, probably. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get into these things and start messing with them. You know what I mean? And start improving them. I think I'll probably jump in there and try to be one of the pioneers of electric vehicle performance. Because we've all got to grow at some point. But I'm still going to have a love for combustion engines. So be on the lookout for the episode about the future of combustion engines and what I think, because that's kind of going to tag along onto this episode. But I don't know. So last question for you guys. You decide. At this point, are EVs worth it in the long run? Will they stick around? That's what I want to know from you guys. Leave a comment below if you're on YouTube. If you're on the podcast platforms, please hit us up on our Instagram. Send me a DM, whatever. Comment below on a photo. Whatever you want to do. Let me know. You decide though. Are they gonna last in the long run? Are they gonna stick around? I don't know. That's up for you guys to decide. So, this has been your boy Stevie G. We'll see you on the next episode of the Sims Garage Podcast. I'm out.